So welcome everyone. My name is Mary Eleanor Power and I am the Director of Marketing Communications for Dalhousie University's Faculty of Open Learning and Career Development. And I'm delighted to welcome you today to the webinar focused on workplace wellness, making it easy and effective. And I'll just take a minute to introduce our host of today's webinar and instructor, Darren Steeves. So Darren is the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Habit Forming Technologies. He has worked with thousands of employees, countless HR professionals, world champions, Olympians, Olympic medalists, and C-suite executives, multiple companies. As a speaker, Darren has presented to thousands of people in both lecture and workshop formats on topics ranging from leadership to resilience and beyond. You will also benefit from his book called Are You Ready? Stop Wishing It's Friday. Darren is now very excited to be the developer and instructor of Dalhousie University's new Certificate in Total Health and Wellness Strategy, and he is here to share some of those details with us, as well as walking us through a really dynamic webinar. So thanks so much. And if you have any questions, one housekeeping note, if you have any questions, please feel free to add them in the chat button that you see below. I will also be adding a link to the certificate so you can get more details or check it out while Darren is speaking, and certainly we'll send a link to everyone before the end of your workday today with a recording of today's webinar, as well as some more details on the certificate. So Darren, over to you.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And, I've said it probably 4 times this past week, and it's not lip service, it's truth. I know one of the most valuable resources everyone has is their time. So thanks for spending time with me and our group. And I hope you get to take away a couple nuggets or something that you'll be able to use from my missteps, my learnings, and all the things that I've been doing for the last 25 years or so. So yes, take care in the heat, humidity. I did have 4 or 5 athletes that I still work with in Tokyo, and I do work quite closely with the physiologist as well. And so we had put a plan in place how to handle like the 50-degree weather over there. So stay hydrated, stay cool, and do all those good things if you happen to be in one of the hot spots. So if you do, I didn't get to send out a pre-message, but if you happen to have fluid with you, just get that close to you, or if you can grab some quickly that's maybe nearby, that's great. If not, that's okay. I'm going to give you a couple options. We're going to work through an exercise to start with here in a second. So I do have some slides just to try to keep me organized, which some people in my world know is not easy, because once I get talking about this stuff, it can be challenging. I've also realized how to do an interactive presentation with more, because I'm going to be opening stuff. So that was fun. I was practicing yesterday. So yeah, we're going to talk about this concept of total health, which is a term that a group of us coined probably 6 or 7 years ago to try to address more than just physical health, mental health, life health, and now certainly including the environment that you're in. And obviously I'm going to touch on that as well. And I'm sure a lot of people can attest to it. And of course, we decided to use this word strategy. And I get there's some probably people on this call and in the world that I work with that kind of internally roll their eyes when you say strategy. My experiences have been the reason for the people who internally roll their eyes, or actually physically roll their eyes, is there's been many cases that I've been involved with and colleagues have been involved with where you end up writing this really awesome strategy and then it sits on a shelf or it's not implemented. So I feel, and my experiences have been, that's when people kind of go, oh, here we go, another strategy. So that's why I'm going to spend time talking about moving from a strategy into implementation and action and follow up and so forth, which I've turned down contracts, and pretty big hefty contracts, when I felt it was just going to be a strategy or there wasn't going to be implementation or so forth, because I want to see the fruits of my labor as well. So again, thanks for joining us. So I'm going to first of all introduce you to my Aunt Hilda. Some of you may have an Uncle Chuck, so forth, but this is what goes through my head about and has for this one right before we get started. So this is going to be bad. They're going to regret spending time with me or having me. I am not prepared. And this is not going to resonate with them. People are going to walk away after a half hour or so and go, wow, that was not worth my time. So here's a strategy, just a micro example of what I do and I've had people do. So I'll get you to start by just either sitting back in your chair. If you're in a standing station, you can just place your hands on your chair or on your desk, and I'll get you just to look straight ahead for right now and just start by taking some deep breaths. So in through the nose and out through the mouth. Again, nose and out through the mouth. Good, nice and slow. If your mind is wandering, that's absolutely normal. Just bring it back. If it's, what is this person having me do? That's okay, that's normal. Just bring it back. Now, as you keep the breathing, what I'll ask you to do is bring your focus to the fluid in front of you. Or if you don't have fluid, that's okay. Just your hands on your desk or your hands on your chair. Nice slow breaths. Again, I'll ask you to bring your attention to the water or the feelings of your hands against the desk. Or if you're outside watching this on your phone, put them in the grass. And when your mind starts to wander, I'll ask you to bring it back to the feeling of your fingertips touching the table, or now start to notice the glass, the cup, the water bottle, its shape, its size, and so forth. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do in a second while we do this deep breathing and we start to become present, I'm going to ask you to take your fluid, bring it to your mouth in a second, feel it go across your tongue, down your throat, and into your belly. If you don't have fluid, that's okay. What I'll ask you to do is just slowly move your fingers across the grass, across the desk, across your chair. And go ahead. Thanks for doing that with me. So now you've experienced mindfulness. We've started to demystify the concept of mindfulness, which is very popular. Meditation, mindfulness, there's thousands of apps now. Here's what starts to go on in my head when I do my mindfulness, which I've been pretty consistently doing since about 2005. They're going to love me. I've presented on this 1,000 times. This is all new to them, and I'm well researched. So as you know, or some of you may know, with mindfulness and meditation, with a small amount of time committed, you can actually start to change your brain, what's called neuroplasticity. So similar to if I tear a muscle in my bicep and it shrinks, over time with rehabilitation, I can recover that. Same thing happens in your brain. Neurotransmitters kind of get damaged and little things start to happen with high levels of continual stress. We can actually start to change that. I don't know how many people out here remember participation, but participation was a strategy the feds came up with, probably 30 to 40 years ago, probably 30-ish. If anyone knows, you can drop it in the chat box. But it was 30 minutes of sustained physical activity. It was get 30 minutes of sustained. And what happened was they recognized, there was a bit of a shift, but people felt it was daunting to get 30 minutes of sustained physical activity. So what's happened as of recently is now it's more, I don't know if anyone has a pedometer or counts their steps or what have you. What we recognized is we can actually do intermittent physical activity and get the same effect. So you can accumulate 30 minutes of physical activity, exact same effect, which is awesome because people can actually, more people could commit to doing that rather than, okay, I got to block off 30 minutes. Well, here's what we know with this mindfulness. If we can accumulate 6 to 8 minutes of mindfulness a day, we can actually start to see this neuroplasticity in a short amount of time, 6 to 8 weeks. But again, as a life coach, which I did for about 15 years, what I knew was if I said to a client or a group, you just need to add 8 minutes of mindfulness a day, most people would go, yeah, right. So you want me to do 30 minutes of physical activity, you want me to get 8 hours of sleep, you want me to shut down 2 hours before I go to sleep and start to bring blue screens down and so forth. You want me to go to the grocery store and get my food. You want me to prepare it. You want me to have a meaningful relationship with my partner. If I have children, I got to spend time. Okay, when am I supposed to do this? So we took the same philosophy and worked with 400 healthcare workers prior to pre-COVID. And we said, what if we ask people just to do it for 30 seconds to a minute a day, continually throughout the day? The reason we chose fluid is that 80% of the people on this call right now are dehydrated. So Canadians most walk around in a dehydrated state, which has a pretty nasty effect because we're made up of water. So we said, what if we combine fluid intake with mindfulness, short bouts, would we have this effect? So with this little study we did back in 2016, what we found was we saw hydration levels go up. So actually consciously having people focus on intake, actually we saw the water intake go up. The other cool thing that we saw was, hopefully you can see my screen, I noticed a positive impact on my mental health with drinking water throughout the day. And we also saw the same effect with mindfulness. So this was just me doing 10-minute webinars over 6 weeks to see, can we actually have an effect? The other really interesting thing with this little study, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, it was just a little fun takeaway for you, was we had people journal the day after we did the webinar. And in that journal was more robust information. The subjective people were saying, and these are all employees, the stomach issues I've had for the last 5 years are 50% gone. I slept through the night for the first time in 5 years and woke up before my alarm. I've had dry mouth from this medication I was taking and it's gone. So we saw these major things that you read about in the literature. And I was literally dumbfounded. Sure, could it be what's called a placebo effect, which is just you believe it's going to work, but I'll take that. So it was pretty cool. So there you go. Something that you can incorporate if you're not already incorporating is some mindful hydration, which is projects. I've done that a number of times in different organizations. When we actually get to the micro, what are we going to do? It's also a bit of a setup that a lot of companies do random acts of wellness, just kind of, we need to do something this month. Let's make it mindful hydration month. Great, let's do it. And then there's no follow-up. There's no pre-planning. People have a lot of fun. And then it's what's next and how do we sustain it? This is more when I talk about strategy of how does this mindful hydration fit into the overall initiative or what we're trying to accomplish. And that's kind of my goals today, is to discuss, I don't want to say, I never like the word expert, but yeah, I've been doing this a long time and I've kind of looked at the literature, looked at practical application, looked at what some of the world leaders were doing. So I'd like to share with you today kind of how, and I'm going to use a case example. Gratefully, Dal, who I've done a lot of stuff with, has allowed me to use them as an example today. And I'll walk through eventually what, Sherry and I have been working on in the certificate program, what we want to help people learn and go through during this experience, during the certificate. So that's my goals today, is just to kind of high level, what does it look like when you're actually been tasked to say, here you go, you're going to do the wellness, you're going to do the total health, you're going to do this thing in our organization or for our group. So yeah, my evolution has been interesting. So similar to probably some of you, if you're out in the field, I thought it was going to be simple. When I started in the 90s, it was like, I'm just going to write a perfect exercise program and everyone's going to do it. Then what I recognized was, oh, you got to get people ready to do it. And this is where the whole psychological learnings for me started. I'm not a psychologist, but I play one on TV. I recognize, man, I got to learn a lot of stuff about this because it's about 8% of the population is ready for an exercise program. The rest are not. We have to get them ready. Then in the 2010s and beyond, I started to recognize you can actually do all that. And that might be futile if you don't have an environment for someone to do physical health, exercise, sleep right, nutrition. Well, it wasn't that uncommon to my sports science career as well. So like I said, I've worked with multiple Olympians and been involved in that process. Same thing. I thought, I write this perfect sports science program. And then, you've got to get the buy-in from the coach. You got to get the buy-in from the athlete. You got to deal with preconceived notions of what it was. Then I recognized same thing, environment. Then when more related to this, when I decided in early 2000s, I'm going to do corporate wellness. I'm going to go into organizations because I've got this philosophy and idea and seems to be working. And same thing, I thought, oh, everyone's going to buy in and do this. And I recognized it took, you have to get people ready to do it, which we're going to talk about today. And then you have to create the environment. And it was mentioned earlier. Yes, I did start an IT company, having a lot of fun with it. You can check it out at Jack Habit if you're interested. I'm not selling to you because we're a white label. We go through insurance companies, but I feel like we got something that helps people in a total health to form habits. That's our goal. Which again, and not a sales pitch, this what led me to writing a book called Are You Ready? Stop Wishing It's Friday. And I wrote it with a colleague, just of these stories I kept hearing when I was working as a life coach, and then in the corporate wellness world. It's like, it's the same story over and over. How can we help? So I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to use Menti. So if you can open up another browser right now and go to, you can see it on my screen, menti.com. And we're going to use that code 2581. Oops, sorry. 2581 3138. So I'd love for you, and sorry, this is just the best way I can get, the slides to show up. So you can write in that code 2581 3138 and just write a few words of how do you feel. You may not have much experience, or you may have a lot of experience, but how do you get people to flourish at work? I'll give you one example. Is it strong leadership? So how can you have people flourish more often at work than not? So I will do the classic presenter and just wait and see if we can get people to write that in. Let me know if there's any complications with that. Yes, I will put the code in the chat. Good question. So it's 2581 3138. There you go, 258. Hopefully I didn't write that wrong. We got it. Thank you, 258. There we go. Nice. So we're getting some stuff coming in. I'll send this out after to you. I'll get it out to Sherry and we can send it out. But yes, trust, empathy, and encouragement. Absolutely. That word trust is a big one in workplaces right now. And, some people believe it's a foundational component to have people be flourishing at work and having input and engagement. So again, you guys know this. It's just putting it all together. Allowing independence. There's great HR studies on that. Positive feedback and credit when it's due. I've been in many workplaces where you want to frustrate people, take accolades when you didn't do the work. Goal setting, another big one that's out there and important. Transparency. When I started this new company, Habit Forming, we're up to 15 full-time employees. And we're an open book. We almost let people know what everyone's making. We're honest. We show the budgets, which comes with risk, but we're trying to be as transparent as possible. Micromanagement. We always hear this word autonomy. Soliciting feedback. People want to feel like they're part of the evolution of the organization. So thanks for that. Keep filling them in. I'm going to jump back to the presentation because it's classic Darren. Is trying to get out a lot of stuff in a short amount of time, because I'd love for you to walk away with some ideas and feedback. So thanks for that. Not uncommon stuff that you've written. And obviously a lot of people went to the environmental components. You didn't see people, having a physical activity program, having a nap room. What you saw from the people who wrote was more the environmental aspects. And this is what I think is critical, is that we understand to flourish in life or in a workplace is you need the environment and you need the skill set. Unfortunately, I still see a lot of organizations going straight to the skill set, and they'll call me and say, we want to do your resiliency program. It's amazing. I've heard great things. And I went, awesome, love to do it. But I also want to do this full leadership assessment. Oh, no, we're fine. So when I go into an organization, I want to be part and also look at this. Do you have the environment for someone to flourish, an employee? And do they have the skill sets to flourish? Unfortunately, we're still leaning into it's on the employee rather than just also on the employer. So what we've done, and I've done it before, is create assessments and individual assessments for organizations. So you can see one here that we've done in the past, which was it was a 12-month initiative. We did focus groups on campus. We asked the leaders, we asked everyone, what do you want out of this assessment? And you can see that, you know, in the certificate, we'll talk about this 13 psychological, psychosocial workplace factors. And it is important, and it's almost law now in most places. And what we do is create these benchmarks of where we are. And then, of course, that leads to where we go. So this was just one feedback of the assessment that this organization did. So getting a marker for where we are at really allows you to know where to go, which is more efficient, more agile, all those kinds of things. So you need to evaluate the environment. And that's one of the challenges, is convincing people, which is now, I would say, the crux and one of the first places to start. And I appreciate that leaders, they're bombarded with, you need to do this initiative. They're getting it from every aspect of the company. But I will say there is a shift that the leaders within the organization recognize. We need to do total health and wellness, but we need to do it the right way. This is coming. Before, it used to be, like I said, just here's 10 grand, go do something. Here's whatever. Now they're saying, well, create a budget and tell me what it costs to do this right. So if you can validate and show this is the way it's done right, then you might get what you need to do it right. So this leadership part, which again, we'll talk about in the certificate program, is how do we build this report? I've got two experts who are going to come in and do some interviews with me as part of the content, who've led and have expertise in how do you build this relationship with the leader to make sure you get the budget and the support that you need to do this the right way. So like I said, I've worked on this for over 10 years. And so once you got that leadership support, then it starts to get into what's the flow, what's the model, how do we have success? So I'm going to quickly show you just an example of what I feel is this high performance model. I'm not suggesting that sport is perfect, but I took some of the sport learnings, and I do feel that good sport imitates good life, good workplaces. So I've seen how it can work, where we can end up with a gold medal and with a system that works. So, you know, I'm going to break these down just in the next little bit of time that we have, but planning, what's a gold medal profile? How are we going to benchmark this? What's the foundation? How are we going to have engagement? And then how are we going to check up on this to make sure we're going in the right way? So when looking at planning, one of the first things, and I'll hope this pops up on our screen. It does, great. So this was the DAL example that we did together. There we go, better you crew. So this was a 43-page document we put together specifically for this group and how they went through each phase. And so what is a better you crew? So it was on campus. We developed these pockets of champions and pockets of groups. And we ended up writing what's the philosophy on campus of how we're going to do this. And I'll show you a couple of the different documents that we use. So what's the planning? And so it's a lengthy process. You can read a lot of the stuff on developing a wellness program. You know, if you're doing it, I feel the right way, the employees aren't going to see you for about 6 months. There's that much, 6 to 8 months, and maybe even more depending. That's how much planning needs to go in to do this the right way. So again, this was just phase one of developing this philosophical, how are we going to do this approach? So, you know, even developing the roles and responsibilities for this action team. Who's going to be the team lead? Who's going to be the learning lead? Who's going to be the action lead? So these are some things that you can do to make sure you have success. So if I jump back over, here's another example of the library group on campus. Sorry, just a little bit of delay and jumping back over. So they actually, you know, to inform, they created a 5-person wellness action team. And then they let people know, here's what our mission is. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. And similar to what you said around, you know, inclusivity and some of the things that you said, even within the wellness, people need that they feel that they're part of it. And it's not just, like I said, I hate to belittle my own thing, is here's a physical activity challenge where 80% might go, I didn't want that. So they, put out a note saying, we want to be the eyes and ears, feedback's important. And this is where we started with that group. The other thing, which I'll go more in depth with in the certificate program, is something that we spent over a year doing, is this wellness solution index, myself and a couple other people. And what we wanted to do is we went through the literature, we went through best practice, we went through everything. And how do we assess where we are on this continuum for a wellness program? So what we did is we went through and said, okay, there's quality factors and there's effective factors. So we looked at, how do you currently stand? Where are you at? And a gap analysis. So I'll give you an example of our assessment tool. So this was not just Darren and Jesse and other people coming up with this. This was grounded in how to have a successful program. So this is an assessment tool that we developed, that we use. And, I'm going to share in the certificate, but it was, a 0 to 5 rating on dedicated employee time to health. And you can see some of these aren't randomly picked. They're founded in some research. Dedicated spending budget. How much are you spending per employee? So we sit with the people who know this in each of the different departments of an organization, and we evaluate them. We evaluate the organization based off of this. And we have really good feedback and really good success with this, because this ultimately drives where are we going with this? So again, almost like a true gap analysis. So this would be an example of the output of what we do. And so we actually score them, the WSI score. And are you in a preliminary stage? Are you in a building stage? Or are you actively engaged in that aspect of that tool within the quality and the implementation? And then we provide notes for that. So I'm going to share that within, and so people can use it. Then, this was also part of that assessment. So how are we going to benchmark? Here's another example of that assessment tool that we used. Sorry. So you can look at some of the really big factors going on in workplaces right now, especially with, post-COVID, in the middle of COVID, burnout. So that's an actual real number. 51% are feeling burnt out. This is within a specific department. And then 53% is the overall. So they can actually compare themselves to the overall organization and where are we at? And is this something that we're going to address right away? You see that flexibility time dedicated to well-being. So this was an assessment tool that we developed for this organization based off what they wanted to look at, what industry feels is wellness and so forth. So then you actually have the real information to go, okay, now what are we going to do about it? Rather than just randomly, and there's gut feelings, people know the organization, but you really want to know the organization. And this allows efficiency. So you're not just kind of going at a shotgun approach. It's like, we're going to focus on these two things for the first 6 months, and then we're going to reevaluate them. So once you get all that information, you've planned, you've done all these kinds of things, then what you can do is actually really write out the plan. And sorry, I know it's not keeping up with my cursor, but this is where you really get into, okay, we've got the wellness solution index, we've done the gap analysis, we actually know where we are with regards to health metrics and 13 psychological risk factors. Then what this organization did, this one was Dow, they allowed me to say that, they've created an overarching group. So there's 8 people on this group that's for the whole organization. And they wrote like a philosophical piece. What is the overarching, what we're trying to accomplish as Dalhousie? Then what I showed you earlier is then what libraries did was took that and said, okay, what parts really kind of fit us? Where do we want to change that really fits what libraries' needs are? So they created this overarching concept and then broke it out into those better you crews, which is a pretty cool concept, but certainly sat through vision, mission, purpose, values, and so forth, to make sure they had this foundational piece. And I'll share with you, where we went from, okay, so we've got that overall arching, then it really turned into, like I said, this better you recruit for libraries. So the more individuality you can provide, and individuality in the sense of a subgroup, the more likely they are to be engaged, the more likely they are to do it, because they're like, oh, they really listen to me and these are our needs. because again, it might not be a fitness challenge. It might be, I need flexible time so I can work on Saturday, so I can take my kid to the hospital on Tuesday, or I need to go to my own maybe healthcare on this day. So that may be what's most important to people. So when you dig in, you can actually find that out. And then what you see is this subgroup created their own concept and really grew. Ultimately, what you're probably hearing and seeing, it takes a lot of time and effort. So you're trying to get this organization, you're trying to get your organization or our organization bought into doing this. And like I said, I am going to share all this info and learnings of the last 20 years through this. So this is what they went through. And then I'll just show you. So what they did was, and I remember the sweat on the brows of people when I said, okay, let's put a number to it. So remember that big assessment that we did? We actually, within each subgroup, said, we're going to see a 5% improvement. We're going to see, and people said, we never put numbers to anything. And I said, that's okay if we don't hit 5%, but let's set a target based off how we feel we can do. So, then we can actually set a goal, like people said, and then did we hit it? Did we not hit it? Why did we hit it? Why did we not? And we can go back to our best practice implementation plan, which you're seeing here, and did it work? And we actually set targets for everything. So an activity, the resource required, what's the action step, what's the timeline, and what's the indication of success. My apologies, I am running over. I told you I have a tendency to do too much. I'm getting close. So then, instead of waiting for this full big benchmark over here, you can actually set out some small pulse checks. So you can use maybe parts of the global assessment, or you can make up mini assessments and go, okay, what's our resiliency level? What's our personal wellness score? What's our work engagement score? So you can actually do little sub-assessments as you go along before you do this big global assessment, every 18 months, or typically it's somewhere between a year and 2 years, because you want time to see an effect. But you can still do these mini assessments that, are we on the right path? The other thing that towards the end here I'll mention is this ROI VOI calculator. As you can tell, I'm an evidence-based, it's one of my values, and I'm not fearful of if this doesn't work, because you learn from that too. But there's this concept of ROI, which is a return on investment, and VOI, which is a value on investment. So what we'll talk about in the, I think, unit course 3 in the certificate is the difference between these two. And I've got a couple other people coming in to discuss it, is what is a return on investment? It doesn't have to be this complicated. It could be just simply long-term disability, days off, sickness, what have you. You actually, within those subgroups that were made up and part of your plan, is what are we going to use for, how are we having a return on investment? Because you spent time with the leaders to say, we need $150,000 out of the budget to do this right. And now it's like, but I feel if we do this right, it'll be a $450,000 return by year 3. The value on the investment, I believe, is a lead indicator to ROI, because one of the challenges is it takes time to have an ROI. But if you're also looking and evaluating value on investment, which is engagement scores, some of those early indicators that people are happier and healthier, and maybe turnover rates, then that can lead to these bigger ROI calculations. So thanks for your time. I have done quite a bit of research in the area of resiliency. I'm pretty passionate about it. We finished a 3-year project with students at DAL, which is young professionals. And this was just one comment that came through. I've got about 40 pages of these, where we had this effect by using, when we get into micro examples of resiliency, and I just wanted to share this with you at the end, is when you do it the right way, you can really have an effect on people. If it was about the money for me, I'd go make the next Abicizer, because I published a couple of papers on core training, but I like helping people. My purpose is to help people through collaboration, evidence-based excellence, and integrity. And I'm having a lot of fun with it, and would love to see you, in the course and having, learning this with me, because I enjoy the educational process and being part of it. That's also my dog, Rudy. So if you're really, really, really bored one night, you can go to YouTube, and I did my TED talk on my dog, Rudy, everything that I learned from my dog. And I learned a ton, and I've gotten some pretty good feedback. It's just stories of Rudy and what I've learned from resiliency and how I employ it in my practice every day. So thanks everybody. I hope I didn't talk too fast, and I hope I didn't cram too much in. I like to have people walk away with a tidbit. And sorry for running over a little bit. If you had to take off, I understand. Thanks.
No, thank you, Darren. That's fantastic. And it seems that lots of our audience have stayed on. So really appreciate you walking through such a great variety of information. And we'll have to include a link to the TED Talk in the email, the follow-up email, and locate that so that people can watch that as well. I'd love to open it up to any questions. If anyone has ones right away, any burning ones, we will be including Darren's email. If you have any questions about the certificate later today, and then we'll also keep the recording. I did include a link to the full certificate in the chat, and we will be including that later today in our follow-up email. I will also mention that we do have, for a limited time, a discount on the full certificate. So if you are interested in taking all of the courses, there is information about a savings of up to $200 for registering for the full certificate. But that is available for a limited time. So if you are considering the full certificate, certainly consider it sooner rather than later, I should say.
And a free book.
There you go. I do wish it was Friday sometimes.
Yeah, I bet.
Given that it's Thursday.
But that's okay. That's acceptance, right? It's okay to every once in a while wish it was Friday. That's okay. It's
absolutely.
when it's every day.
Yeah, and thanks, Sherry, for just including a note. The first course starts, thank you, on October 12th. So there's still plenty of time to consider. I should also mention we have the full certificate, but certainly you can take any of these courses individually. That's always an option that's available to you. You know, you can take them at different points throughout the year and still work toward that full certificate. So there is some flexibility there. But I don't see any questions coming in from the chat. I'll just wait another minute here.
Yeah, I'd be interested how many people are out working or are in the space of wellness, if anyone wants to throw that in the chat. So are people working in the space? Are they having struggles with getting convincing leadership to do it the right way? Are they doing it the right way? Did what we talk about today resonate with them? We also might have a lot of people who logged in and had to jump, like actually, but stayed logged in. But yeah, if there's anybody who have any experiences so far with what we discussed, that would be great too. But I also appreciate it's
yeah, feel free to, and if you wish to just share comments verbally, then you can raise your hand, or if you wish to include any comments in the chat, you can certainly do that as well.
Thanks, Heather.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, well, we will wrap up there. And if there are any questions, please feel free to reach out to Darren. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Really appreciate your time, Darren. Lots of really fantastic information, and we'll be back in touch later today. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.